Hey everyone, this is Matt Johnson with Viral Marketing. I'm excited to be here with Greg Harrelson. We have a special guest, Darren Stack, and this is going to be a really, really cool event today. So we're actually going to do a live coaching call, and you're going to see Greg Harrelson coach Darren as a new agent and see the process and the steps that they go through to make sure that Darren's successful. You're going to get a really good insight into Greg's coaching and leadership and the fundamentals that he teaches. And I want to encourage you first, if you'd like to keep up on these events and you want more content from Greg, go to harrelsonhangout.com and sign up for his newsletter. So, Greg, just want to welcome you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you helping us out here. And for those of you this is the first time you've seen one of our hangouts, Matt's going to hang out with me just to make sure that I don't mess up this hangout, turn it off, or delete something, or if the audio is wrong, he can get us on track. So I appreciate you stepping in right now. And if you want, I'll just go ahead and get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them right through the Q&A app. If they're relevant to what Greg and Darren are talking about in the time, I'll go ahead and bring the questions right then. Otherwise, we'll hold them to the end. That way they can address them and actually answer your questions right on air.
Okay. Well, good. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So today I've got one of my agents that's been in the business for a little while. His name's Darren Stack. I'm going to go ahead and introduce him, have some conversations with him, get some information so you can have an idea of who he is, how long he's been in the business, and where he currently is in the process of his business. And then I'm going to go through a series of questions that I ask my agents quite often, and just to kind of identify what are some of the challenges that he might be having, and then we'll go ahead and get into the meat of the coaching. So Darren, why don't we just start off, make sure anyone who sees this or is watching right now understands who you are. So, Darren Stack, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, how long have you been in the business?
I was officially licensed at the end of September or beginning of October, so technically 4 months, but with Christmas and Thanksgiving, roughly I've been active about 90 days.
Active about 90 days. So you're definitely a rookie in the business. There's no question about that. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I believe I believe the title of this was, how to prevent failure, when it comes to a new real estate agent. And that's one of the things that I want to dive into, with you a little bit later in this call. Tell me this though, like, what were you doing in real estate? Or I know what you were doing, of course, but tell everybody what you did and why you chose to get into real estate.
So before I was in real estate, I was actually a broadcast meteorologist. 11 and a half years in the TV industry. Finally got to the point where 2 a.m. wake-ups were no longer fun. My body was just completely exhausted from doing it. I still loved what I was doing, but it was just time for me to make a career move. Being in my mid-30s, starting a family, all the points were showing signs of it's time for a change. And if you don't make a change, how much longer can you endure staying on that same path? So after about a year and a half of planning, because making a change like that's not a quick decision, it's something you've got to prepare for. After about a year and a half of planning for it, it was time to make a change and just start a new career. And it wasn't up until about 2 months before the end of my contract in television that I decided to make a change over to real estate, when you and I sat down and had a conversation at that point. I was lucky enough to see a post that you put on Facebook. Just happened to be, I guess, fate, law of attraction, whatever you want to call it. Sitting there saying, if you're looking to make a career change, come talk to me.
Yeah.
And it was just sitting up in my news feed. It wasn't a direct message to me, but in my eyes, it felt like it was a direct message to me,
Yeah.
So you and I sat down for 2 hours and talked about some of my concerns at that point, and it was like, okay, let's go all in.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And for those of you that don't know, I enjoy playing tennis, and whether I'm good or not, let's just say that I'm a competitor.
You're good. Come on now.
Okay. Well, it's all relative, but the thing is about Darren is I also know Darren from the tennis courts, and one of the strengths that we might talk about a little bit later, I actually noticed well before I ever had conversations with you about real estate. I noticed some things about you in the tennis court that once you started the real estate conversation, I had a feeling of where this might go. So, how did you end up choosing real estate?
Solely from having a conversation with you. I mean, I bought my first house 5 years ago, and when we purchased, I enjoyed the experience, and ever since then, it was kind of something that was inside of me, always keeping an eye on the market, keeping an eye on where things were going, and that was always something that I kind of just enjoyed watching, seeing what the market was showing and taking a look at and helping my friends kind of maybe
Yeah.
find a place or whatnot, but just on the, on the side, nothing as far as serious goes. And then, when you and I talked and knowing of what the potential the future could have, it was then that the decision was made.
Okay, well, you never told me that, so that it was because of me solely. So now I've
Yeah.
got a whole nother burden of responsibility on my shoulders. So, this could get exciting for those of you that are going to watch me coach Darren, because now I realize his success or failure is going to be my fault.
No, no, no,
So,
no. You can't put it all on you. It's, you got me
absolutely.
into the business, but it's all on me. I mean, it's
Right.
my business. It's my choice ultimately to, be work hard enough to be successful, or to sit back and not do the job and not be successful. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So, usually when new people get into the business, one thing that I've known or I've noticed is that everyone gives them the advice. So, what kind of advice were you getting when you told your friends and family members that you were thinking about getting into real estate? What was the advice? What did they give? What information did they share with you?
it was kind of mixed. Some of my family were a little hesitant because, I had a pretty good job at that point, it's steady income. They're like, well, we just had the big drop in the market. Are you sure you really want to do that? There's a lot of agents out there, that there's a lot of competition, and on the other side, people were excited and saying, hey, it's a great market to be getting into real estate, and I think that your personality would fit it. So, so it was kind of a 50-50 kind of
Yeah.
emotion that was coming toward me.
Did you have any real estate agent friends, and did they give you any tips like, okay, if you're going to get in it, this is how you make money, or what information were they giving you?
I actually, for my immediate friends, I kept it very low key. One
Mm.
of my family members, my brother-in-law's dad, is actually a pretty successful agent down in Florida. Did really well with his business down there. And when I had a conversation with him, and I kind of described some of the things that go on within Century 21, the Harrelson Group, he was gung-ho saying I was going into the right place and was in the right position.
Okay, cool, cool. So let's get into your business a little bit. So you've been selling for about 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
How many listings do you currently have right now?
Right now I have four active, a fifth that's pending right now. We went under contract about a week and a half ago.
Okay, got it. And have you closed anything?
One deal already closed beginning of this year. It was a listing that was taken probably middle of last year. Should have closed mid-December, but with the holidays and everything, it pushed till January too.
Okay, good, good. So you got five listings, one pending, one's closed.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get those listings?
A variety, a few for sale by owner, cold calling, and then centers of influence. My first listing that I took, that was actually under contract in 14 days after I took the listing, was a centers of influence through just a friend of mine on Facebook who I actually had met only through Facebook. They were actually a fan of mine, per se, from being at a TV station.
Got it. Okay, good, good. Right now, so how many contacts are you making per day?
I'm shooting for 50. Days that I have a slower day, I'm averaging at least 35 to 40 a day.
Okay.
But there are
Okay.
days when I hit 50 and 60. So
So on
kind
the
of all
days
balances out.
on the days that you have a slower day, let's say
Mhm.
30, what causes that day to be slow? Because let's face it, you get up whatever time you wake up, but you get to the office around 8 o'clock and you start generating business.
Mhm.
So between 8 and 11, when you're generating business, there's really not anything there that should be taking you off schedule.
Right.
But the results of those 3 hours can vary.
Right.
So what is happening on the days where you're only making maybe 30 contacts versus the days that you're making 50?
So I'm generally starting out with my day with for sale by owners or rent by owners, trying to start off with some of a quality phone call. And if you make a lot of for sale by owner contacts, those conversations can run a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest struggle has been kind of timing when I should stop moving from for sale by owners and start getting into more of a quantity to hit more contacts. But if I'm at the point in the first 5 phone calls of the day that I've set 3 appointments, or had conversations that will lead to an appointment in the next few days, then that will ultimately shorten my time to go after a higher number of contacts.
Sure. Yeah. What we're dealing with here, for those listening, as you know, is quality versus quantity. And I do believe you need to be hitting both in order to be successful and have a well-rounded business. So let me ask you this question. What, on average, on a weekly basis, how many contacts do you typically get on a weekly basis? I know what the range is between the days, but what is typically your average from a week?
160 to about 180.
Okay, so let's see, 180. Okay, so that would be how many a day? That's anywhere from, is it back
about
to your
35, about 35 on
45?
average.
35?
Yeah.
Okay,
For
I'm
180,
sorry.
it's about 35.
Okay. Okay,
That's
so
just
here.
kind of a ballpark figure there.
Okay, so here's a thought. Okay, it's okay for your contacts to fluctuate between 30 and 50 from a daily basis, but it's not okay to miss your goal at the end of the week. So what that means is, and let me kind of put all this together, is quantity versus quality. We all know that if you're dealing with a high quality list that you're prospecting, that your average time per call is going to be higher, so therefore your average contacts per hour is going to be lower. So your contacts per day is going to be lower, but you have to make them up at some point. Or else you might as well just make your goal, instead of your goal being 50 a day, which is 250 a week, you ought to just set your goal at 180. Right. So a few things that you can do is, number one, let's be real and say, I'm not going to hit 250, I'm going to hit 180. Or let's go in and dissect each individual day and say, on Monday, at 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, you call this person. At 9 to 10, you call this person. At 10 to 11, you call this person. You may be more heavily weighted of quality in the beginning of the week, but at the end of the week, like especially for sale by owners, in every market across town, and I mean in the country, unless we're dealing with a major metropolitan market where you're probably not working the whole market anyways, when you look at the number of for sale by owners that are really the types of properties that you will work, most people in most markets can get through those in the first 2 days of every week. So one way to do it is you call all for sale by owners on Monday and half the time on Tuesday. Now you've got quality out of the way, so you're going to have maybe only 25 contacts per day on those particular days, but then you shift over to just sold and just listed calls, and all of a sudden you might have 60 to 70 contacts a day on those particular days. That'll give you your average of 250. So you really want to look at your schedule, and you got to create a prospecting schedule. Most people in the beginning, when they come into the business, they say, my prospecting ritual is between 8 and 11. That's your prospecting ritual. But what is your prospecting schedule? That's different. And we don't want to confuse the two. There's a big difference between a ritual and a schedule. A ritual is something that you do consistently, and barring death, you never miss. A schedule is something that often fluctuates. And there can be shifts. Sometimes you have to make business decisions and do one thing versus another because it's the right business decision. But when it comes to a ritual, there's no fluctuation. So I know you've been, I see you at the office, and I know you are fantastic at the ritual. So what you want to do is start looking at, what is my prospecting schedule? A ritual is a habit. A schedule is your actions. It's like really what you're going to do within the ritual. So we can talk about that a little bit more. I got some other questions that I want to ask you, but that is something that we really need to dig into.
One of the things that I run into, kind of like a wall, I guess, is my I have this list. So my folder for sale by owners is extensive. It's really thick, trying to get through all of them, and I might have a few good conversations, so that pushes back how many I can get through in a day. But for some reason, I feel like I have to call every single one of them every single day, because I feel like I'm going to lose a potential prospect to somebody else that actually catches them on the right day.
Okay, fantastic. And so here's a rule, and the rule is you make 3 attempts, and then you stop calling them. So I'm not going to say 3 attempts and then stop calling them ever, But in this particular situation, I would say, instead of calling that for sale by owner at 10 o'clock on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, call them at 10 o'clock on Monday, 10 o'clock on Tuesday. Then have another file that this, and you could name the file, I've called them at 10 o'clock on Monday, I've called them at 10 o'clock on Tuesday file, and then you put them in that file, and then anything in that file has to be called Wednesday at 6 in the evening, 3 in the afternoon, or whatnot. So once you call them 2 to 3 times at the same time and you don't get them on the phone, then the definition of insanity, doing the same, expecting different results. You have to shift them to a different time zone in order to get them on the phone. And just always remember, your prospecting times are breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You typically probably call them at breakfast every time, but if they're eating out for breakfast, you're never going to get them. So you got to make sure that you call them at lunch, or you got to call them in the evening. So I always see people doing this is they keep calling the same people at the same time, and that burns up your prospecting time. There's some other things that can kill your prospecting, the number of contacts, but that is a contact killer right there. So just make sure that you shift them to another time zone. Okay. And you can do that. But you can be very organized, and what will happen is you're going to see that your rate. There's a few ratios you have to look at. You look at the attempts to contacts. You look at your contacts to appointment, and then you look at your appointments to listings taken. Every single the appointments to listing taken ratio, the contacts to appointment ratio will all dramatically increase when you shift people to different time zones. And you want me to tell you why that is? Say yeah. Because your attempts to contact ratio will go down. Instead of making you 4 attempts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 10 o'clock, then you only make 3 attempts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon. You got them Wednesday afternoon. That was only a 3 attempt to contact versus before it was 4, 5, 6 attempts per contact. Everything will trickle down from that number of contact, that one number. Okay, so what would you say? What would you say is your strength? I mean, you've only been in it for 90 days, so what is your strength? What do you think your strength is, or what do you think it's going to be?
One is, I feel like I've had really good conversation with for sale by owners. I feel like that's become a strength. At first, it was nerve-wracking to even make that phone call. The first 60 days or so, I was doing just solds and cold calling that way, and I feel like that's become a strength. I mean, I have the just sold script like the back of my hand, so that's kind of like my 9:30 in the morning after I've done all my rent bows and for sale by owners. I hit cold calling from 9:30 to 11, and I do generally a just sold. So I feel pretty strong about my conversations, but there are obviously the days when we were talking about it, last week, contactitis, where you're on the phone, you're just talking, okay, let's get your email, let's move on, just to be able to mark off another one instead of having more of a quality phone call.
Yeah. So the thought behind this is, if you're calling to make contacts, you're going to get nothing. But if the purpose of you calling is to set appointments, you're going to get a lot of contacts. If the purpose of you calling is to get a lot of listings, you're going to set a lot of appointments. If the purpose you're calling is to get a lot of sales, you're going to get a boatload of listings. So for those listening, just remember, whatever your intention of the call is, you're going to default down one level. It's just the way it is. I don't know why. It's not a law. There's nothing I can show you in a book that says this is the truth, this is the fact. But let me just tell you, off of over 1 million contacts that between myself and my team and my company has made, and all the coaching conversations I've been in, it's just one thing that always holds true. So if you're really out there focusing on making a lot of contacts, you're going to get nothing. So what you really want to do is every day you want to check in and say, hey, before you make that first call, what is my intention? What is my intention today? Why am I doing this? And then, after about 45 minutes of making calls, you probably ought to have a little buzzer go off on your phone, and it says, hey, ask yourself this question. And you need to ask it again and again and again, because after you dial the phone, or whatever you're doing, whether, if you're double dialing or single dialing, whatever you're doing there, and you're making a lot of contacts or you're making a lot of attempts and you're not talking to anybody, you'll actually lose sight, you'll lose focus of what it is that you intended to accomplish during that period of time. So you've always got to check in, but just always remember that, because if you say to yourself, well, what is my intention today? Well, I'm going to make a lot of contacts. Well, guess what? You're not going to get anything for it.
Right.
But if you say to yourself, hey, I'm actually calling for listings, you're going to get a boatload of appointments. Now let me share it a little. Let me say this, because let me share with you what my psychology behind that statement was. What you intend for the call will determine how you listen. So if somebody says to you, hello, and you say, hey, it's Greg Harrelson, do you want to sell? No. Okay, thank you. Bye. Got a contact, right? If your goal was to get a contact, you got a contact. But if your goal was to set an appointment, or let's just skip that one, if your goal was to get a listing, and you said, hey, when do you want to sell? And the person said to you, no, I don't think I want to. Then you would automatically hear, there was hesitation. So let me ask another question. So because you heard hesitation, you asked another question, and then all of a sudden you set an appointment. So the intent of your call influences your listening of the call. Your listening of the call determines the result of your call. Does that make any questions on that?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
You're clear. Okay,
yeah.
Good. I know we've talked about that, and I wanted to take it a little bit deeper for the people that are listening.
Yeah, last week, there's a prime example of it. I came in, had made about 5 calls, we'll call it 5 contacts, had, we'll say 1 or 2 connections, but one of the guys was just very, kind of was, I guess I caught him in a bad mood, and my mindset was not in the right place when I had the conversation with him, and I felt myself being very tense on the phone. As soon as I got off that phone, earlier I had spoken with a lady, and she had given me her husband's cell phone, and I put it aside for a little bit. After I got off the phone with the guy that was really tense with me on the phone, I actually stepped away, and I took about 5 minutes to kind of readjust my head, because I knew any other contact I make from here on out wasn't going to be anything of quality. And to be honest, I actually came back in, I looked at that piece of paper from the number that I got, and I looked at it and said, I'm going to call him and I'm going to set an appointment. And I'll be darned, I have an appointment with him this afternoon.
Good. Awesome.
So it's one of those things that you're absolutely right. If you're not looking to get the listing, if you're just looking to have the conversation, then you're not going to get a listing. You're not going to get an appointment. And that was kind of I tried to avoid that trap last week, because that's something that I actually heard you coach another agent in the office about that a while back. And you had said to him at that time, just take a few minutes, step away, and come back in with the right mindset. And sure enough, the rest of the day, I didn't schedule another appointment, but I had the conversations were 1,000,000 times better. The emails that I was able to receive were tenfold compared to what I would have had I not gone out and readjusted.
Awesome. That's cool. That's great. So let's dive into weaknesses. What would you say your weakness is right now, or what do you oh, I can sense you have some weaknesses. So
we all do.
Yeah, we all do. So what do you feel? What's coming to your mind?
2 things. So scheduling my day to where, basically, as we said earlier, putting a time frame of when I do things. 8 to 11, I'm fine showing up and making my calls and doing that. I have no problems doing that, but it's during that time I need to schedule myself better. But it's also the afternoons. I finally started to actually get into Google Calendar and start placing when I have appointments. So I'm working on improving my scheduling of my day. But that tends to be my biggest weakness. And then the balance of dedicating myself to work so much that I take myself out of the other part of my life, which is family, and being able to enjoy the outside world. And that's, my biggest challenge when I first started, especially, I would drive by the office on a Saturday afternoon, and I would see cars at the office, and I would feel guilty that I wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and reality was I was actually going to spend time with my wife, which I should be enjoying that and not feeling guilty about work.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
So here's a thought. So let me ask you this. Did you schedule time with your wife? And I don't want that to sound cold, meaning did you have it though planned out in your schedule on Saturday
mhm.
that, was it literally in your schedule to do that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. And it should be.
Mhm.
So let's start with this. So you said your weakness is scheduling, or
Mhm.
one of your weaknesses is scheduling, and
Mhm.
you mentioned two things. You mentioned, the afternoons, and
Mhm.
then you mentioned, time, family time, and personal time.
Mhm.
So here's the key. And this is something that Matthew Ferry shared with me years ago, and him and I have been on had different conversations and have shared this with so many people. And he taught me that if it's not in the schedule, it doesn't exist. So if your personal time is not in your schedule, then guess what? It doesn't exist. If your family is not in your schedule, then guess what? It doesn't exist.
Mhm.
So what ends up happening when our wives or our spouses or significant others in our family and even ourselves, when we don't exist, remember, if it's not in the schedule, it doesn't exist. When we don't exist, our business suffers.
Mhm.
That's it, period. When we don't exist, our business suffers. So if we think about it, the most important thing to put in your schedule is your family, your spouse, and yourself.
Mhm.
That's it. I mean, it's the one thing that I know that no matter how hard I drive or coach somebody, no matter how committed I am to supporting them to be successful, if they do not have time set aside for themselves and their families, it usually I can usually make a lot of money with somebody in a very short period of time, but it leads to burnout, dissatisfaction, divorce, lack of joy, unfulfillment, and all these other things that ends up we never make money on the long haul
Mhm.
together. So I will say this, at 90 days into the business, the most important thing that you can do when we get off of this call or this coaching session
Mhm.
is to sit down and ask yourself, what do I really want to do with myself personally? Like what do I want personally? What do I want? And then you want to ask this with in your relationship. It's like, what do I want from my relationships? What type of time do I want to spend with with my wife or with anyone else that you
Mhm.
might and this can be your friends.
Mhm.
It really can. I just and it, what happened, and I don't know if you've heard this story or know this. The only reason that I'm playing tennis right now,
Mhm.
even though I don't play as much as I used to, is because of this same coaching conversation that I had with Matthew Ferry. And Matthew said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I mean, I guess I could play some tennis. My wife was a good tennis player." And he says, "Okay." And he goes, "Well, why don't you take some lessons?" And of course, we have a mutual friend, Will Bull, that coaches
Mhm.
tennis. And I said, "Well, I'll call him." And he made me schedule tennis lessons at 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
Mhm.
which, by the way, was an interruption of my day, but I couldn't schedule it at 5 in the evening because that took away time for family. See,
Right.
my family was scheduled at 5. So I can't, if they're not in my schedule, they don't exist, right? So I
Mhm.
couldn't put personal time into my family time.
Mhm.
So for both to exist, I had to put them both in the schedule. I put it in at 2 o'clock, maybe a couple days a week at 2 o'clock, and I never missed. I never missed it. And to me, I would say that is one out of, if I was to choose a top 5 or definitely a top 10, it's probably one of the top 5 to 10 coaching messages I was ever given that had an impact and really influenced the success of the operation. So I challenge you with the same thing because you're young.
Mhm.
And if you do not get in touch with the things, your hobbies, and you do not stay in them, you're going to hate the career. And
Yeah.
believe me, there's a lot of people that have been in this business for 15 years that hate it. It's a myth that real estate career offers freedom of time. That is incorrect.
Mhm.
Freedom of time is only granted to top producers who focus on themselves and family first and then work around that. So the only top producers, the only ones that really have freedom of time and are making an income are top producers, and they have themselves and families in their schedule. So I challenge you. I'd like to see by the end of this week, I'd like to see what that schedule looks like. Can you commit to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, and if you don't do it, then what?
I owe you something.
Okay, well,
be accountable to me.
Why don't you tell everybody what that is? Let's be accountable to everybody. Yeah, just 100 push-ups or something. I don't know.
I was going to say, because monetarily right now, I can't throw anything out there, but 100 push-ups, I'll put it out there.
All right, in front of everybody while we're eating lunch on all-day prospecting day.
Okay.
That'll be fun. Okay. So on yours, what is your challenge with your work schedule?
Just getting organized enough during the day to put in time for appointments, role playing, try to schedule, like we try to schedule in role playing with our days that I just decide to throw in an appointment instead of going to role play. And again, that's not a bad thing because I'm going for business. I'm missing role playing for business, but it can't be a regular thing. So
yes.
Just being flexible in my schedule, but also understanding that there's a schedule there, that's where my biggest problem has always been.
So is role playing in the schedule?
It is.
Okay, so you haven't had an issue of getting it in the schedule. It's just an issue of being consistent with it. Is that what you're saying? Being
consistent with it, but also getting to the point where I'll set an appointment knowing that, because I have 4 or 5 different role-playing partners, that I can set an appointment for this time period because I know that I'm not going to burn them for not showing up.
Sure.
But in essence, I'm burning myself for not showing up. So
that is right. That's right. So where
knowing this and doing it and actually acting upon it are 2 completely different things. That's, I guess, my challenge is I can schedule everything. It's now just following that schedule.
Yeah. So here's my hunch. My hunch is that your attachment to going on the appointment and getting the business is influencing the decisions you make as to whether or not you stick to your schedule. And so the results of you getting that appointment are not associated with you sticking to your role play appointment, but your attachment is. So you have this perception that if I don't just agree to go here, then the chances are I'm not going to get it. I might lose something. If I don't say yes to now, then I might lose something. But you got to understand, the person that you're setting an appointment with, they're probably not saying this to you. I doubt there's many people that are saying, Darren, I've got a very busy schedule, and my window to meet with you is between 1:20 and 1:50. That's all. If you don't get in that window, I won't be able to meet with you for 5 weeks. And I've got another realtor that says that they could meet with me at that exact time. Have you ever heard that?
No.
And I haven't either in 20 plus years of real estate. But I do hear people all the time, I talk to them about what's the best time for us to get together, and they say, well, how about 11:30? And then I say, okay. Or I could have said, you know what, right now I've got a commitment at that time. How about 2, or would 3 be better? Well, no, I'm not going to be able to do it at 2 or 3. Well, how about tomorrow at 1? Will that work for you? No. Okay, then you can default back to and make a business decision as to whether or not you want to go to that appointment versus go to your role play session. Okay,
right.
But what will happen is 9 times out of 10, when you offer a time, you are going to end up setting an appointment time that is different than the original time that they mentioned. They're just throwing the first pitch.
Right.
In baseball, one of the most powerful things to do is take the first pitch, not swing at it. Let the catcher throw it back to him. Let him catch it. Okay? So my suggestion here is this, is when they say, well, this time, then if you've got something else already in your schedule, then be transparent with them and say, hey, if anything, it looks like you're busy. in their eyes. So you're not going to lose anything. And if they can't adhere to that next schedule, then you can always go back and say, well, I tell you what, let's go ahead and schedule it. I'm going to call I'm going to see if I can rearrange the other thing. I don't think there's going to be a problem, but I'll go ahead and do that when you really can.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think and you said it, my biggest fear is losing the appointment or losing the potential listing, because as a new agent, the first thing is obviously you need inventory to have anything to sell. And it's kind of like I feel like I should drop everything to run out to this appointment, because I need the inventory and I need to have the conversation to get the listing to and I can't miss the appointment. If I miss, that's the mentality that's going in there.
Yeah. So here's a thought. If you look back at this hangout, because we're going to get a copy of this, I want you to listen to, and for those of you that are in the audience or going to hear this, did you hear how many times you said need?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because let me tell you, you're not going to get what you need out of this business. You're going to get what you want out of this business. And there's a big difference. You will not get what you need. The business will not grant you what you need. And the reality is you don't need it. You want it. You might have a strong desire for it, but you don't need it. And the sooner you can really come to terms with, what, I don't need it, but nobody wants it more, then you'll stop selling your soul. And let me tell you, selling your soul is a habit. And you got to break it and get it under control really, really quick. Now, all of this being said, you're really not going to lose anything. It's just you have a perception. You've got a story in your head that says, hey, if I do this, I'm risking this. Well, I've got a lot of experience, so you're going to have to just kind of bear with me and trust me on this one. You're actually just being a business person. When that same homeowner is talking to their attorney, that's how the attorney conversations go. When that same owner is talking to their doctor, that's exactly how the doctor conversations go. They say, yeah, well, can I come by at 2, Mr. Doctor? And the doctor says, no, it's going to have to be 4. They say, okay. So when you start communicating with them in respects to your schedule, the same way that other professionals start communicating with them, then they'll look at you different than they look at all the other realtors in our profession. You don't want to be, yes, I'll do anything at any time for you. You really want to be, hey, look, I'm going to do my best. I am a professional. I am going, I do have other commitments, and I'm going to get back. We're going to get together as soon as we can meet, both of our schedules can meet together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's critical. So I really want you to really grasp on to the conversation about how many times you used need, because that I promise you, if you're coming to your calls and you're coming to the office needing to get something, then it's not going to happen. It's going to happen slow, I should say. But so just that language alone is going to influence your approach. And your approach, and it'll influence the language that you use, which will influence the customer's listening of you. Clients don't want to hire agents that need anything, but they do want to hire them when they want it. So it's the difference in I'm hungry, but I'm not starving. There's a big difference in being hungry and starving. So I know we're coming up to, we've been on here for about 40 minutes now. What kind of questions do you have for me?
Well, you and I have talked about my goals. I know they're kind of lofty probably for a new agent. I want to go for 30 to 40 deals this year, 40 transactions, 30 of sellers, 10 on the buyer's end. But the challenges, and we talked about this, of needing to have a system in place to be able to handle that. Okay. I don't have a budget. I'm a new agent. I have, financially, it's a challenge. Obviously, you can't afford an assistant. So, realistically, are 30 to 40 deals realistically for somebody who doesn't have the budget to be able to put the system in place to be able to go? Or should I be more realistic about my goals?
Yeah, so for most people, if you say, okay, your first full year in the business, they're going to say 30 to 40 deals. What is this guy thinking? That's like very seldom does it really happen. That's
Hmm.
the reality. Most of the people that are going to listen to this are going to say, there's just no way he's going to do it.
Right.
And they're not naysayers. They're just looking statistically at the numbers and they say, gosh, that's just not what's going to happen.
Hmm.
So I'm not one of them. I actually do believe that you can do it. I believe you can hit a very big goal, but it's going to really be determined by your actions, not your budget, not your systems. A little too early for the systems yet. You've only got 5 listings. One of them are pending. We
Right.
have a list. We have a listing department and a closing department, so it's not like you're babysitting, all of these files.
Right.
The key is here is what is your system for prospecting? What is your system for generating business? I don't know. Are you doing follow up before 11 o'clock?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, okay, that's a problem. Okay,
Okay.
so the 8 to 11 is for prospecting.
Right.
Follow up and prospecting are 2 different tasks.
Now, for intensive follow-up, this is, say, a conversation that I had maybe a month or two ago with somebody that said, yeah, I'm looking at maybe selling in the spring, and that was the conversation I had in October, November, and here it is, January, February, that's the follow-up conversation I'm having, not somebody that
Okay.
I've talked to last week.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Unless they're
Yeah.
a FSBO.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah, so you can call that would be I'm glad that you mentioned that because I would call that prospecting also. I would not call that follow up. So that's
Okay.
good. So what you really want to do, I mean, if it was me, okay, and if there's any old school real estate agents that are looking at this, they'll believe this. Most of the new agents that come in won't believe this. Okay, the reality is when I was in your shoes, I was making 60 contacts a day as a minimum. I did not go home.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you're making 30 contacts a day, I'm going to call it 30 because you're averaging 35. But just to make
Sure.
make it easy for me to calculate, I will outperform you 2 to 1 only because I'm making twice as many contacts as you. Okay,
Hmm.
that's not, and we're not talking about you could be better skilled than me,
Hmm.
but because I was surely making more contacts, I put myself in the opportunity to earn income twice as many times as you, then that's why I would be more likely to do it. So can you do it? Yes, but you cannot fall under 50 contacts a day.
Hmm.
That would be my recommendation. So what you have to look at is you have to look at if I was going to do 50 contacts a day, and let me tell you, I know that's a big number, but
Hmm.
so is 30 to 40 deals in your first year. That's a big number.
Right.
So your big goals require us to have big number conversations,
Right.
right?
Yep.
For those of you that don't have those types of goals in your first year, hey, you don't have to make 50 contacts. It's no big deal. One's not better than the other. But if you're going to hit these types of numbers, you have to hit 50 contacts minimum per day. So
Hmm.
what you have to do when we get off the call is you have to go and look. It says, what does my day have to look like to accomplish 50 contacts? As if 50 contacts is your number one goal, period.
Okay.
So that's going to be 250 contacts per week,
Hmm.
which in my world, I believe is that anybody starting their business, that's what they should do. And it doesn't matter how you make contacts. I don't care if it's FSBOs, expireds, cold calling, just listed, centers of influence, past customers, whether you're working Facebook, social medias, sending direct mail, sending email blasts, whatever you're doing, you have to put yourself in a position where you're talking to 50 people a day. And if you will do that, then your goal is very realistic. But if you allow anything to stop you from that,
Hmm.
it's going to be, you won't hit the goal. And I'll give you an example. If somebody says, I can only meet you at 9 o'clock, but I will list with you, you're going to go. I would suggest you don't go.
Okay.
That's painful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's painful. It's because your attachment to the short-term revenue versus your commitment to the long-term goal. And let me tell you, it's not you. So many people would make the same decision. I remember one day, and I don't want it to be about me, but I remember one day when a builder called me up and says, I have to meet you at 2 o'clock, I'm going to list 13 homes with you. And I said no, because I had to play tennis at 2 o'clock with Will Bull.
Wow.
Still got the listing, but I was that committed. And I remember being conflicted with that. But Matthew told me if I wasn't committed to myself and my personal life, I was going to be doomed at some point. So I was committed to the long-term goal, knowing that there could be short-term pains. Now, you'll have to digest that and figure out what that will mean to you. But just understand, keep your eye on the long-term goal. There's going to be frustrations along the way. And your ability to tolerate those frustrations, find comfort inside of the pain, inside of the discomfort, is going to be the keys to your success. It'll show up. And I do know you. If I was going to say your strengths are tenacity. You're bold. You're courageous. You're a great communicator, a great presenter. Everything that I just said will make you a great real estate agent. Those are all things that you have to have, and a lot of top producers have. The key is right now is stay committed to number of contacts. Any other questions, or Matt, is there anything you want to add, or any questions for us out there?
I haven't seen any questions come in from the audience, no. So feel free, guys. You know, you've still got some time to submit those right through the Google Plus page, and we can answer them real quick before we get off the Hangout.
Well, good. Anything else, Darren?
You know, obviously one of the challenges is that as a new agent, you're going up against agents not necessarily like you, but top agents in the area, top agents in the market. And I know, prime example, I had somebody that a prospect that I had been talking to for several weeks, finally had set an appointment, called to confirm the appointment on Monday to find out that another agent in the area had said and told her that I was a newbie in the business. And she wound up signing with I don't know if she was a top producer or not, but you know, I find that to feel like a challenge that I didn't even have the opportunity to get in front of this potential client to, you know, show them just because I'm new in this business doesn't mean I can't do the job better or, you know, to the best of anybody's ability than what this other agent was doing. You know,
right.
How do you ace? Because it's almost like a pride. You have to swallow your pride. I mean, you and I both know. You know, it doesn't matter how long you've played tennis, but if you know you can beat somebody on the other end of it, and you don't even have the opportunity to step on the court with them, it's how do you overcome that challenge? You know.
Yeah, it kind of stings a little bit.
Yeah.
So, as a newer agent, one of the things that I would do is I would be talking early on in the conversations with these people about my team and how our structure is. It's like, hey, you know, one thing about hiring me is when you hire me, you get my team. And I work with so-and-so and so-and-so, and combined, we did this much business. We sell a lot of the listings in-house, and you start to share that information even when it wasn't requested of you. What you're doing is you're kind of future pacing them, that if somebody does drop in that conversation about, oh, this person's new, then they have that other information. So the truth is, yes, you're new, but the other truth is that you're a part of a team that dominates your local area, your local market. So then it's like, okay, they're going to likely be in the position where they want to really hear both sides now. They didn't probably hear your side, so therefore, as soon as they threw that out, then that seller probably thought, oh, I wonder if he was trying to hide that.
Right.
So it's kind of like future pacing. You're going to go ahead and bring up your strengths early on, in preparation for somebody else, in preparation for another agent possibly bringing up maybe a stat that would be perceived as a weakness.
Gotcha.
So go ahead and talk about the advantages and the value that you bring on the front end to diffuse a potential a conversation that they may have with an agent, because you already know that that's likely going to happen. So then go ahead and address it up front. Right. You know, and I wouldn't say it like this, you know, hey, Darren, I just want to let you know that, another agent's probably going to say that I'm new, and let me tell you what my objection handler is to that. You're not going to say it like that, but on the front end, you're going to say, hey, before we get off the phone, I know you're not ready to do anything right now, but before we get off the phone, I just wanted to share something that, a lot of owners who hire us really enjoy, and that is the fact that I'm really a part of a team. When you hire me, you're really going to hire about 3 to 4 additional real estate agents. You're going to get us all working for you. In the last 24 months or 12 months, this is how much we've closed, etc. So you talk about we instead of me. And they end up saying, wow, this is great. And then you follow it up with your statistics from a company standpoint. So they still see we. And then now all of a sudden the other agents saying, well, I did this, I did that. Well, how many people are on your team? Well, no, it's just me. Well, maybe this owner wants a we instead of just a me.
Right.
Okay? And at least it'll keep you in the game. Whether or not they choose you later on, who knows? That's a different conversation. But you were eliminated from the game before the game ever started, and that's what you're trying to accomplish. This would just be one technique to do it. Gotcha. So, Matt, I know we're kind of running at the end, and I like to keep them really around 45 minutes. We went a little bit over, so I'm sorry if anyone's hanging out or watching this that it took a little bit longer. But hey, I'm Greg Harrelson. What I'm doing right now is just kind of allowing people to hang out with us while we're doing a real conversation, having a real coaching call. This is a real agent in my real company. I'm really coaching them, and we'll continue to have these conversations even after the call. So I hope you enjoyed it. Matt, I appreciate your help, and well, I guess we'll check it out and see everybody in another month.
That's right. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.